bermasyarakat yang baik. Maka dari itu, program studi kesejahteraan sosial hadir sebagai solusi. Yang kelima, program studi sarjana sosiologi. Secara garis besar, ilmu sosiologi dapat dirangkum sebagai bidang keilmuan tentang masyarakat. Sebagai cabang dari ilmu sosial, jurusan sosiologi secara spesifik akan mendalami berbagai bidang yang terkait dengan hubungan antar manusia dan pengaruh dari terbentuknya hubungan tersebut. 6. Program studi sarjana administrasi publik. Administrasi publik adalah hal terpenting dari bidang layanan publik. Profesional administrator publik menghabiskan hari-hari mereka bekerja untuk memastikan bahwa organisasi mereka berjalan semulus dan seefisien mungkin. 7. Program studi sarjana ilmu komunikasi. Program studi ilmu komunikasi adalah sebuah program yang berupaya menghasilkan lulusan terbaik sebagai pelaku profesional pada bidang komunikasi dengan spesialisasi di bidang komunikasi strategis serta komunikasi massa dan digital. 8. Program studi sarjana jurnalistik. Jurusan jurnalistik mengajak mahasiswa mendalami dunia jurnalistik beserta karakter dan dinamika yang terjadi di berbagai media massa seperti televisi, radio, cetak, dan online. Mahasiswa akan mempelajari bagaimana suatu informasi didistribusikan melalui media massa dengan mengetahui karakter masing-masing media beserta perubahannya. 9. Program studi sarjana perpustakaan dan sains informasi. Program studi perpustakaan dan sains informasi menghasilkan lulusan yang dapat mengelola pengetahuan dan informasi menjadi produk berdaya guna, menerbitkan kumpulan informasi sesuai dengan kebutuhan pengguna, membangun konten dengan menjadi konten creator yang menyajikan informasi yang berkualitas, dan dapat berwirausaha di bidang digitalisasi dokumen serta pembuatan software perpustakaan. 10. Program studi Magister Administrasi Publik, 11. Program studi Magister Ilmu Komunikasi, dan 12. Program studi Magister Kesejahteraan Sosial.
Kami memberikan pelayanan terbaik didukung oleh sarana dan prasarana perkuliahan seperti laboratorium, perpustakaan, ruang perkuliahan yang nyaman, fasilitas olahraga, gazebo mahasiswa, juga sarana dan prasarana lainnya. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu memiliki dosen yang berpengalaman baik dalam negeri maupun luar negeri, serta telah banyak membangun kerjasama di universitas ternama di Indonesia dan di Asia.
Pelayanan merupakan yang utama bagi kami. Dalam melayani mahasiswa, kami sangat mengedepankan ketersediaan layanan, sehingga mahasiswa Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik menjadi terbantu. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu berkomitmen untuk menumbuh kembangkan sivitas akademika yang berkompeten di bidangnya. Maka dari itu, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik memiliki banyak dosen yang sudah mencapai gelar doktor dari berbagai belahan dunia. Mengikuti perkembangan zaman, FISIP Unip telah melakukan berbagai inovasi dalam pembelajarannya, salah satunya melalui media daring guna meningkatkan mutu pembelajaran. Kegiatan kemahasiswaan, hingga hari ini, FISIP telah menciptakan banyak kegiatan mahasiswa yang diantaranya Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Expo, Dekan Cup, serta program-program di tingkat jurusan, fakultas maupun di tingkat nasional.
Cek, cek audio. Ada Pak? Mohon izin, apakah suara kami di ruang utama terdengar jelas?
Cek cek. Iya, selamat selamat datang Pak Abai, Pak Sugeng, Bu Desi di room meeting. Mohon bersabar ya, ini cobaan.
Oke, siap, monitor.
Oke, Pak Abai. Pak Sugeng juga udah ada nih, Pak Sugeng Soeharto.
Agak kecil suaranya Pak Danang.
Iya, agak kecil ya.
Mm-mm.
Cek cek cek. Gimana? Iya, gimana Pak Abai? Masih ya?
Masih, Mas.
Masih Rip. Cek cek. Cek cek gimana Pak?
Ah, ini besar nih.
Oke, sip. Kita lagi menunggu yang dari Timur Leste juga. Mereka sedang menyiapkan parlementer.
Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu. Didirikan pada tahun 1982 hingga sekarang, sudah mencetak lebih dari ribuan mahasiswa yang sudah bekerja di bidang sosial dan politik. Sampai saat ini, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik berkomitmen untuk menumbuh kembangkan setiap mahasiswa untuk bisa berkompetisi di berbagai bidang keilmuan sosial dan politik. Visip Unip memiliki visi yaitu menjadi fakultas yang mengembangkan kajian ilmu-ilmu sosial dan politik pada masyarakat pesisir berkelas regional ASEAN pada tahun 2025. 1. Mengembangkan pendidikan dan penelitian dalam bidang ilmu sosial dan ilmu politik lokal, nasional, dan region ASEAN. 2. Menghasilkan karya berstatus hak atas kekayaan intelektual atau HKI. 3. Melaksanakan pengabdian sesuai dengan kebutuhan masyarakat pesisir di tingkat lokal, nasional, dan regional. 4. Memperluas jaringan kerja atau networking ke region ASEAN dalam pendidikan, penelitian, dan pengabdian di bidang ilmu sosial dan ilmu politik. 5. Mengembangkan sistem tata kelola universitas yang baik dan bersih. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik memiliki 12 program studi yang terdiri dari 1. Program studi vokasi administrasi perkantoran yang merupakan sebuah program studi dengan lulusan vokasi serta akan berfokus kepada administrasi perkantoran. 2. Program studi vokasi jurnalistik. Program studi vokasi jurnalistik merupakan sebuah program studi yang mempelajari tentang jurnalistik. Lulusan program ini akan berfokus kepada penerapan jurnalistik di lingkup-lingkup pekerjaan seperti wartawan profesional dan lain sebagainya. 3. Program studi vokasi perpustakaan dan sains informasi yang merupakan program vokasi yang mempelajari tentang teknisi perpustakaan dan manajemen perpustakaan. Yang keempat, program studi sarjana kesejahteraan sosial. Di dalam berkehidupan di masyarakat, tentunya sebuah kesejahteraan masyarakat sangat penting dilakukan demi menunjang kehidupan bermasyarakat yang baik. Maka dari itu, program studi kesejahteraan sosial hadir sebagai solusi. Yang kelima, program studi sarjana sosiologi. Secara garis besar, ilmu sosiologi dapat dirangkum sebagai bidang keilmuan tentang masyarakat. Sebagai cabang dari ilmu sosial, jurusan sosiologi secara spesifik akan mendalami berbagai bidang yang terkait dengan hubungan antar manusia dan pengaruh dari terbentuknya hubungan tersebut. 6. Program studi sarjana administrasi publik. Administrasi publik adalah hal terpenting dari bidang layanan publik. Profesional administrator publik menghabiskan hari-hari mereka bekerja untuk memastikan bahwa organisasi mereka berjalan semulus dan seefisien mungkin.
7. Program studi sarjana ilmu komunikasi. Program studi ilmu komunikasi adalah sebuah program yang berupaya menghasilkan lulusan terbaik sebagai pelaku profesional pada bidang komunikasi dengan spesialisasi di bidang komunikasi strategis serta komunikasi massa dan digital. 8. Program studi sarjana jurnalistik. Jurusan jurnalistik mengajak mahasiswa mendalami dunia jurnalistik beserta karakter dan dinamika yang terjadi di berbagai media massa seperti televisi, radio, cetak, dan online. Mahasiswa akan mempelajari bagaimana suatu informasi didistribusikan melalui media massa dengan mengetahui karakter masing-masing media beserta perubahannya.
9. Program studi sarjana perpustakaan dan sains informasi. Program studi perpustakaan dan sains informasi menghasilkan lulusan yang dapat mengelola pengetahuan dan informasi menjadi produk berdaya guna, menerbitkan kumpulan informasi sesuai dengan kebutuhan pengguna, membangun konten dengan menjadi konten creator yang menyajikan informasi yang berkualitas, dan dapat berwirausaha di bidang digitalisasi dokumen serta pembuatan software perpustakaan. 10. Program studi Magister Administrasi Publik, 11. Program studi Magister Ilmu Komunikasi, dan 12. Program studi Magister Kesejahteraan Sosial.
Kami memberikan pelayanan terbaik didukung oleh sarana dan prasarana perkuliahan seperti laboratorium, perpustakaan, ruang perkuliahan yang nyaman, fasilitas olahraga, gazebo mahasiswa, juga sarana dan prasarana lainnya. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu memiliki dosen yang berpengalaman baik dalam negeri maupun luar negeri, serta telah banyak membangun kerjasama di universitas ternama di Indonesia dan di Asia.
Our speaker is already on the room of Zoom. I would like to greet him Good morning, Mr. Fidelis.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's very clear. Thank you. Mulai apa ya?
Yes.
Okay, I think we can start now. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Okay. Yes. We're ready.
Okay, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome all of the audience to the second international discussion, Communication Development Democration Perspective in Timor-Leste and Culture Perspective in Indonesia, with the speaker,
Recording in progress.
a very great speakers. The first one is His Excellence Fidelis Leite Magalhaes, BA, MPhil, MSc, MPA. And our lecturer, Dr. Danur Seto Hadi Prasada. Before we begin our discussion today, I would like to read the short CV of the speaker. The first one is Mr. Fidelis Leite Magalhaes is the Minister of Presidency of the Council in the Minister, the Timor-Leste. Mr. Fidelis is a senior government minister in the 8th constitutional government, and his tasks include assisting the Prime Minister in coordinating overall government and serving the government official spokesperson. Mr. Magalhaes is responsible for coordinating the preparation and organization of government work, as well as to monitor the evaluate and implementation of decisions taken by the Council Minister, and to coordinate legal counsel to the government. In addition, Mr. Magalhaes also oversees statewide legal and public administration modernization and reforms. Previously, Mr. Magalhaes served as Minister of Legislative Reforms and Parliamentary Affairs and the acting coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs and Ministry for Tourism, Trade and Industry. Mr. Magalhaes also served as a chairperson of ASEAN Pacific Forum Parliament on Sustainable Development from 2018 to 2019. Prior to joining government, he served as parliamentarian where he headed to Party Parliament Group and chaired the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense and Security. He was an expert on Southeast Asia EU relations as part of the consortium of leading European and ASEAN research university, on hold due to the political role. Chief of Staff to President Tour Matan Reconciliation. He also worked with the UNHCR on refugee repatriation and external relation. He was the 2017 recipient of the Order of Timor-Leste for Public Service, and Mr. Magalhaes was educated at Harvard University, London School of Economics, and University of Lisbon, and the University of Hawaii, Manoa. That was a very great CV. And then I would like to read our second speaker is Mr. Danur Seto Hadi Prasada. He was the lecturer in the Ilmu Komunikasi FISIP UNIP, and then he did his undergraduate in University of Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta and his master degree in University of 11 Maret Surakarta and his doctoral degree in University of Gajah Mada Yogyakarta. Before we begin, let's hear the national anthem of Timor-Leste and continue to hear Indonesian national anthem. All audience is expected to stand up. Okay, thank you very much. All of the audience is expected to back to seat.
I'm sorry. The
The
sinyal
sinyal
Okay. Republic Democratic Timor-Leste, or we call it RDTL, which was officially become a democracy since May 20, 2002, is currently trying to improve bilateral relations with various countries, including Indonesia. This activity is an important part to accelerate the process of economic improvement for RDTL and Indonesia. One of the real action was taken by Indonesia to support Timor-Leste to join ASEAN membership. In this discussion, we're going to find out how exactly are democratic relation between Indonesia and Timor-Leste being reviewed in the perspective of current development communication. It still remain the novel information to be shared. Now I would like to hear the perspective from our first speaker, Mr. Fidelis. The time is yours.
Very good morning. Good morning here in Timor-Leste. I think we are ahead of Bengkulu over approximately 2-3 hours. It's about 11 here. I think it should be around 8 or 9, I suppose, in Bengkulu.
Recording in progress.
Yes, right.
It is indeed an honor for me, and it gives me a particular pleasure and happiness to be able to engage with yourselves, with the academia in Indonesia, Indonesian universities, students, and it is great that we now have this means of communication, that we don't have to travel all the way to see each other, but we can meet through Zoom. While I can sit comfortably here in Dili and in between meetings and to talk to you, then I can go back to the meetings. We are in the middle of debating or discussing our budget. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear. Please continue.
We are in the middle of budget debate for 2023. So we hope for that the budget will be approved soon, so that we'll have another full budget for 2023. And in 2023, there will be a parliamentary election. The parliamentary election is important in our system, because that's where people will decide to choose parties that will form government. And it is scheduled for sometime next year. But first of all, I think let me go to the main point. Thank you very much, and I'm very delighted to have received this invitation from the head of communication program at the Universitas of Bengkulu, Dr. Danur Seto Hadiprasada, and I thank you for the opportunity. And I'll share my view on communication development and democratization in Timor-Leste. I'll divide this talk into 2 parts. First, I will briefly talking about communication development in Timor-Leste, and then I'll follow it up with conversation about the democratization process in Timor-Leste. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think before we discuss about other issues, I think it is important to touch upon the history of Timor-Leste. I think Timor-Leste, as you said, as you rightly pointed out, became independent officially in 2002, and now it is in the process of nation-state building. And what is very important to note is that Timor-Leste wanted to become independent because people wanted to live in freedom. People wanted to enjoy their rights, to express their voices, and to really live in a democratic society. So it was never against the people of Indonesia. I think we have to make that clear. I think sometimes it is misunderstood. Out in the public, people made it sound as if the Timorese didn't like the Indonesians or hated the Indonesians. I think it did the contrary. I think we have always known in the processes that took place in the 70s, 80s, the 90s. It was always an issue about people wanting to be free, people wanting to have their own identity, their own state, but people never wanted to hate the Indonesians. And in our nationalist movement here was always made it clear that it was not about or not against the Indonesian people, but it was against a system. And this is what I think people like our leaders like Xanana, Mr. Xanana, Mr. Ramos Horta, Prime Minister Tauromatan Ruak, and all the leadership. Even in the 70s, the Fredlin leadership, like people like the late Nicolau Lobato, the initial founding leaders of the country, have always made this clear. They said it will never be against the people of Indonesia, nor will it be against the Indonesian culture or traditions. It is always about the systems that we fought against. So with that, I think when we became an independent nation state in 2002, after a UN transitional administration, which started in 1999, Timor-Leste suddenly moved into a situation where there was freedom, a new state was being built, and a nation was being constructed, or strengthened, or cemented, and that phase, that process was marked by the revival of numerous news agencies. Journalists became active again, and news outlets became so mushrooming in Timor-Leste. So with that, I think then this led us to the 2002 independence. So when we became an independent nation state in 2002, I think the situation, the ambience then was that people wanted to be free. And it was more like perhaps the post-reformasi in Indonesia in 98. People got organized, people wanted to be free, people wanted to have their voices heard. And then the new government was established, the new state was established in 2002, and the constitution guaranteed or ensured that the freedom of expression was respected. And freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of information were all guaranteed in our constitution in articles 40, 41, and then laws were enacted to protect that. And so Timor-Leste enacted media law in 2014, law number 5 of 19th of November. And then the following year, the government also approved the decree law, which established an independent press council in Timor-Leste. So, and the role of the press council is the responsibility is to administer and oversee the activities of media and journalism. So we have all this so-called institutional framework. And the government, since the first constitutional government, we have had something sama dengan Menko Info di Indonesia, Menteri Komunikasi dan Informasi, dan juga ada Menteri Muda Komunikasi di Timor-Leste. Tanggung jawab mereka selalu untuk merumuskan kebijakan nasional dan kebijakan pelaksanaan dan kebijakan teknis
I think the connection is a bit. Oh yeah, it's disconnected from there. Okay, it's a very interesting view from Mr. Magalea, and we can see that the focus on his discussion is about that the democration in Timor-Leste is not against Indonesian people and it's not against Indonesian politics. Maybe we can wait until he's back. Oke, sambil menunggu mungkin teman-teman mahasiswa bisa sambil menyiapkan pertanyaan yang mungkin terkait dengan kebijakan demokrasi yang ada pada Timor-Leste dan keterkaitannya dengan bilateral dari dua negara ini dari sisi komunikasi dan perspektif politik yang mungkin bisa dibangun untuk membuat kedua negara ini menjadi hubungan yang lebih baik di kedepannya. Mungkin kita juga tahu bahwa aktivitas masyarakat di Timor Leste itu sebenarnya masih sangat berkaitan ya dengan Indonesia, karena memang seperti jual beli, kemudian logistik barang itu masih terjadi antara Timor Leste dan Indonesia, karena memang lokasi Timor Leste itu sendiri tidak bisa terpisahkan dari Indonesia. Mungkin nanti saya juga akan menanyakan bagaimana tendensi dari EU dan Eropa untuk proses komunikasi dari Timor Leste, karena memang di sini sepertinya Bapak Fidelis ini memang mempunyai pengalaman untuk menjalin relation antara Southeast ASEAN dan EU. Tapi kita menunggu dari Bapak Fidelis untuk bergabung kembali. Tadi sangat bagus sekali apa yang disampaikan oleh pemateri kita yang pertama.
Okay, so yeah, I'm back.
Oh yeah.
Apologies for this. So anyway, so then we have this. So ada setelah kemerdekaan ada banyak sekali news media yang dibangun, didirikan. Ada banyak sekali juga wartawan, mantan aktivis yang dulunya aktivis dan setelah itu menjadi wartawan setelah kemerdekaan di 2002. Jadi suasananya bagus, sangat bebas setelah kemerdekaan di 2002. Tetapi dalam phase of national state building, kelas masyarakat ada banyak sekali harapan, ada banyak voices, ada banyak demands, and in a process like that, normally the tendency is to censor. The tendency is to just to make sure that the state controls the narrative, controls the voices. Because the money, the state budget then was very little, uang tidak begitu banyak, tidak punya banyak dana, dan juga dalam suatu konteks post-konflik. Jadi ada banyak sekali demand, tuntutan, dan negara tidak punya, doesn't have a capacity to deliver. Then you have this, so the new state institutions run by bureaucrats, but some of whom were activists themselves. Then you have the news run by former activists. So this created a situation that I think it was quite a challenge, But instead of opting for full censorship, full strategic communication approach, the government allowed it to be open, the debates to take place, and debates therefore took place. Just a reminder that this was all happening while the UN was also still here, when we were still under we had already left the UN transitional administration, but was still under the supervision of the United Nations. So this continued, and we maintained the process, and now I can say that what used to be quite a difficult process to get to know, to get used to, now Timor-Leste is quite a free democratic nation state. We have good rankings in terms of press freedom. We are number 17 in the world. In terms of political prisoners, we have 0. With regards to, we don't have any political prisoners. With regards to the difficulty of starting up news agencies, news outlets, we say, frankly, that it is easier to start a news agency than to start a kiosk or to start a business, because it is quite free. And in general, the government we do not control the media. So we do not control the conventional media, nor do we control the more recent media like blogs or through the internet contents. So all these things, I think, allowed for the establishment of a much more dynamic society. But we are very lucky because after we became independent, our news, considering that our journalists were all or hailed from activist background, many of them had a clear idea of human rights, of democracy, and had quite a high standard. So they were, in general, very responsible in their reporting. So if we were to compare in many other post-conflict societies, like maybe if we were to compare with Rwanda, with the radio station in Rwanda, and that contributed to the genocide, or in Ethiopia, where also news agencies played significant role, not for progressive objectives, but for regressive objectives, or in support of the state or of the government, or even in inciting ethnic violence and ethnic conflicts. Or in the former Yugoslavia, in the case of the Serbs, against the Bosnians and the Kosovars. In Timor-Leste, we didn't have that. We were quite lucky because our journalists, our news outlets in general were very pro-democracy, pro-human rights, and were pro-reconciliation. So they were very pro the improving relations between Timor-Leste, among the Timorese, and also between Timor-Leste and Indonesia, and Timor-Leste with Australia, and Timor-Leste with the wider region. So that's very important, I think, because sometimes if in a post-conflict setting, if you just let things loose, like in our case, this can also backfire, because normally when the popular demand is very high, news agencies can also they're also an active player. They're not an innocent actor in the process, but they're an active participant in the process. It can be for good, or can be also for bad. So it really depends on each context. But in Timor-Leste, ya, kami sangat beruntung karena banyak daripada kebanyakan wartawan berasal dari background aktivis dan kebanyakan sangat pro human rights, hak asasi manusia, demokrasi, keadilan, dan juga pro rekonsiliasi antara Timor Leste dan Indonesia dan juga Timor Leste dengan Australia. Jadi akhirnya menghasilkan sebuah masyarakat yang lebih toleran. Tapi ini bisa saja gagal karena ada juga dari pengalaman negara lain seperti di Rwanda, yang mana radio di sana bisa jadi alat untuk mengorganisir genocide, dan juga di Ethiopia jadi alatnya pemerintah untuk memerintah dan juga untuk melakukan menguasai kaum minoritas dengan cara yang tidak baik, dan juga di former Yugoslavia. Jadi tapi di Timor Leste itu tidak terjadi karena di sini banyak wartawan yang berasal dari background aktivis dan pro human rights, pro democracy and reconciliation. Jadi mereka berhasil membawa value yang baik yang mana mereka dapat dari masa pemerintahan Orde Baru dalam masa menjadi aktivis, jadi dibawa untuk berkontribusi membangun masyarakat Timor Leste yang lebih toleran. Jadi saat ini Timor Leste tidak punya tahanan politik. Timor Leste tidak punya kontrol sama media tradisional dan juga media yang tidak tradisional, media non konvensional seperti yang lewat internet, yang platform baru-baru tidak ada masalah, dan juga kami tidak mempersulit pendirian registrasi dari siapapun yang mau mendirikan news agency. Di sini dibilang bahwa lebih gampang untuk mendirikan sebuah news agency daripada usaha bisnis, karena bisnis lebih terbelit-belit. Kalau mau register untuk suatu private sector lebih rumit. Kalau news agency paling lebih gampang. Jadi ini semua saya kira membantu Timor Leste. It helped Timor Leste a lot. Sekarang Timor Leste di urutan ke-17 di freedom of press freedom ranking globally, dan Timor Leste is a democracy. It is a democracy. So it is one of the best performing democracies in our region with Indonesia, together with Indonesia. So Indonesia and Timor Leste are both good performing democracies. So with that, I think then one question remains from this from my talk is that does democracy, apa untungnya demokrasi kalau negara masih miskin? Kenapa orang harus bebas terlebih dahulu, sedangkan banyak orang yang masih miskin? Jadi, this is the dichotomy, the endless conflict between the Lee Kuan Yew thesis, the Singaporean approach, which says that the economic rights must come before social and political rights. And there are some other leaders now who are saying that democracy is important, but it's not that important. What is very important is for people to have food, to have good education. But in our process, at least from my very frank assessment, is that had we had a non-democratic system, poverty would have been far worse. Development would not be more egalitarian. We're not the richest countries in the world. We're not a rich nation state, but at least with democracy, our Gini coefficient is still around 28. So we are not that rich, but we are also not an unequal society. we're more or less an equal society. But why is that? Because you always have access to independent news media outlets. Voices can come freely from the municipalities, from the provinces to the central government. Criticism is allowed. Disagreements are encouraged. So in the end, the government is held responsible for its own actions. And the government cannot pretend that it doesn't know. So that, I think, has an advantage. So maybe the process is slower, but in the process, we will be able to deliver and to assist the most vulnerable in the society, because we make sure that we hear their voices and their voices come to the center of government. And this is the same as, it is applicable to other, not only ethnic minorities, but to other groups, such as people with disability, people with the LGBTI groups. So all these groups, their voices are heard, and there is no blocking of information that gets into the central government, the center of government, and there is nothing that prevents information to come to the parliament. And parliamentary debates are being done out in the public and in the open with live television. So all these things, I think, are very important. And this is, I think, this is the best and the safest path towards sustainable development. We can have the other option, but the other alternative can be too risky, because you'll probably, the non-democratic option, you might just really rely on, it is like a bet, it's like judi. Tergantung, kalau kita beruntung, kita dapat leader yang baik. Tapi kalau kita tidak beruntung, kita dapat leader populis yang mukanya baik, appeal-nya baik, tapi kemudian tidak baik. Tidak ada sistem tidak bisa mengatur diri dan membawa pembangunan yang lebih rata, dan juga membawa to ensure it is impossible that it can correct itself and it can continue to ensure popular participation. But with democratic system, with openness, and the good thing is that if you don't like the person, you don't have to elect that person again. And if you disagree, you know that your voices are heard. So I think this is our experience so far, and I think I really think the democratic system is the best path for our development. Sure, it can be slower. But the speed of development will also depend on the knowledge and the skill and the leadership of the executive. If the executive is able, it can work within the democratic system and still deliver good development results. So at least I think this is what we have learned from our experience. And in general, I think in all, I think it is the process is ongoing. The process is ongoing, but to have a better democracy, we also need to continue to work with our civil society organizations and also continue to train our journalists. Because if the journalists are not very well trained and are not providing credible quality information, they can be discredited. And if people get used to discrediting the news sources, then the democratic process will also then collapse by its own. So I think these are complex processes that would require long-term investment. But anyway, I think this is what I wanted to share with you, and I think it is a very important issue that for us to discuss, because in the long run, no country can live alone. We also get the news effects, news impacts from Indonesia. And we learn, we also follow closely the things that are happening in Indonesia. And when there is democracy in Indonesia, where there is democracy in Timor-Leste, the two countries will be able to live side by side democratically. And the government in Timor-Leste, we hope to encourage more people to have this mobility, so people can freely go out, in and out whenever they want to Indonesia and vice versa. And Indonesians in Timor-Leste are living in good size, good number. And many Indonesians, in fact, many people don't know this. Many Indonesians didn't even leave in 99. Many stayed on and continue to stay and are part of our national group of various ethnicities that we have here. And many Indonesians are recently coming to Timor-Leste from Java, from nearby islands, because in the end, whether we like it or not, we are neighbors, and we are all bound by history, by peoples to peoples relations, and I think these are very important that we work hard to maintain. Because this is the Asian opportunity, the Asian century. For our region to develop, it will have to encourage mobility, and maybe it can learn from the European Union. And with that, I think we hope for a better region and more developed Asia for all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fidelis. I have lots of questions, but before we continue to the question term, I would like to hear first from our second speaker about this topic. So I would like to invite Mr. Danur Seto to explain his perspective. Time is yours, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ari. Terima kasih kepada Mr. Fidelis. You want to join in Zoom meeting in international discussion in Magister Communication Science. Salam kenal sebelumnya, Mr. Fidelis.
Ya, salam juga.
Oke. Tadi kalau Mr. Fidelis pertama menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris, saya coba mengingatkan kembali dalam bahasa Indonesia. Oke.
Bahasa Indonesia itu bahasa ini sangat cantik gitu.
Iya.
Saya suka.
Oke. Saya tertarik dengan I'm very interesting about democratic. Jadi bagaimana kita bisa berdemokrasi ketika masyarakat masih miskin? Quote-nya bisa saya pakai nanti itu.
Ya, bisa.
Tapi bagi kami dalam budaya Indonesia yang menarik adalah bagaimana ketika nilai-nilai toleransi itu mampu bergenerasi, bahkan bisa terupgrade, bahkan bisa dipakai di beberapa negara. Jadi saya kembali mengingat bahwa Indonesia itu besar dari sebuah ideologi atau sebuah konsep yang namanya Pancasila. Nah, konsep inilah yang kemudian menjadi penyatu atau menjadi sebuah semboyan dalam berbagai tagline, berbagai lini kehidupan di Indonesia maupun masyarakat Indonesia yang ada di negara-negara lain, menjadi sebuah kesatuan, atau biasa kita sebut unity in diversity atau diversity in unity. Kemudian yang menjadi kata kunci juga dalam gerbang masuk budaya Indonesia ketika proses demokrasi ini terjadi, bahkan ketika post reformasi ya, tahun 97 pasca reformasi itu, dan sebelum reformasi itu justru semboyan-semboyan yang menjadi dasar seperti wawasan Nusantara itu mulai luntur kemudian di Indonesia. Yang suka tidak suka kemudian berdampak pada beberapa wilayah atau beberapa kepulauan. Bahkan dalam 20 tahun terakhir itu Indonesia mengalami kehilangan atau mengalami kepunahan bahasa dan beberapa suku yang ada di Indonesia, dan ini mengganggu aktivitas ekonomi sebenarnya. And then in 2020 Indonesia mengalami, dan kita lah masyarakat dunia mengalami COVID ya, pandemi COVID ya, COVID-19 itu memukul semua aspek yang ada di dunia, tidak hanya Indonesia, tidak hanya Timor Leste, bahkan negara-negara maju dan berkembang lain juga kena. Oke, what the soul of Pancasila? We call it the ideologi negara, fundamentalist philosophies and the way of life and unity of nation. So when we talk about philosophy, the government of Indonesia is open about the toleransi, gotong royong, musyawarah mufakat. Bahkan dalam beberapa sesi Indonesia berjanji untuk memberikan dukungan penuh kepada pemerintah Timor Leste ketika akan bergabung dalam konsensi ASEAN in 2023. Kemudian sebagai ideologi negara, kami di Indonesia itu kemudian mencoba melandaskan atau memasukkan unsur sosio-budaya dalam setiap aspek pembangunan. Dalam pertemuan pendahuluan di G20 di Yogyakarta, di Semarang maupun di Bali, itu aspek ekonomi mikro seperti UMKM namanya kalau kami
Ojo kan analita lagi sumbernya.
Sorry. Beberapa aspek seperti usaha mikro dan menengah itu dilandaskan pada sistem yang kami katakan social culture, jadi sosial budaya. Di sana yang kemudian dalam tantangan ke depan kami mengatakannya dalam proses multi track komunikasi, atau bagaimana pemerintah dan parlemen, dalam hari ini lembaga-lembaga tinggi negara, itu mampu membuat sebuah policy and program yang mampu memprovide data dan mendevelopment indikator dalam proses communication and advocacy. What is the effort of collaboration? I think in academic effort we can start from improving capacity, evaluation, academic script in our university, and to improving data and indicator about the kelemahan dan kekuatan, strengths and weakness, and how to make a good relationship to media, advocacy, improving capacity and knowledge, science, dissemination and supervision. And we start to dissemination and advocacy program facilitated to community. We have 1,027 suku bangsa. Kemudian kita juga sedang menggalakkan tourism professional and advocacy in business sector in tourism. Dan dalam tantangan ke depan, Indonesia itu mulai kemudian kedengar ya? Ya. Dan dalam tantangan ke depan ternyata kami di Indonesia itu mulai untuk memetakan kembali bagaimana proses yang dapat berlanjut. Makanya dalam beberapa sesi saya sampaikan kepada teman-teman di luar bahwa Indonesia have to sustainable tourism program. Indonesia harus mampu untuk melakukan kegiatan riset and monitoring, kegiatan assessment, kegiatan certification and to protect community with the local wisdom to grow up the pembangunan yang berkelanjutan. I think that is Mr. Arif Atresia. We start with discussion.
Okay, very great, great discussion. Maybe we going to open the question from the student to continue our discussion today? Is there any question from offline or online? For the online audience, you could write your question on the chat box, so later I would read the question, so maybe the speaker can answer the question. Maybe to open the question, I would like to ask Mr. Fidelis about the democration. If you learn from Egypt, the source of democration, and there is a history that the Yunani, the country that the origin of democracy, and it's has a history that the country has collapsed because implementation of the democracy. So what do you think, Mr. Why you choose democration to be implemented in the Timor-Leste while you have the history of the down of the democracy in the source itself?
Okay, thank you very much. I think first of all, let me express my my appreciation towards Pancasila, as Dr. Danurseto said earlier. I think just don't think about anything else, but think Pancasila in the context of communicative tools. It's impressive. You know, you have this Pancasila, you have national symbol, which represents the whole national philosophy, and only in 5 silas that that is so easy to remember, that almost a single person in Indonesia can remember, and can remember by heart. And I think this is just, without being political, just seeing things from communication perspective, the ability to present a very complex philosophy, an idea of nationhood into five principles. I think that's remarkable. But why do we humanities, why do we need something like that? Because reality is often too complex. People need to have things that are simplified, but not simple, simplified, that I can understand, that I can easily relate to, and I can tell it to others. So that, I think, is very impressive, and that has a very lasting potential, and it has been. And I believe that this will be the Indonesian national philosophy or principles for infinite amount of years. Now, then it brings us to the question of the issue of democracy and musyawara, mufakat, and press freedom and freedom of expression. I think in a context like this, in a country in transition, like in Timor-Leste, even during the democratization process in Indonesia, we have to always divide things into 2 categories. First is freedom of expression. Now, freedom of expression is the constitutional, the human rights value that we must respect, because our citizens must be able to say and express their disagreements with the rulers and with each other, but in a very, very respectful way, without having to say or disagree in a rather aggressive and violent ways. So I think that's very important. But then there is also another issue, another question that is often being or not so much that we haven't talked too much about, but which has already been discussed in the West, That's the press itself. The media. Like Noam Chomsky, for example, talks about manufacturing consent. So it's sangat penting untuk mahasiswa media untuk bisa belajar mengenai kepentingan daripada media itu tersendiri. Pemilik media, industri di belakang media, itu sangat penting menurut saya untuk di-assess dan dipelajari. Kalau di Amerika sudah banyak sekali pelajaran mengenai itu, ada banyak orang belajar mengenai itu, dan demokrasi barat juga sangat telah dipelajari mengenai kepentingan media dan kepentingan ekonomi dan kelas-kelas elit. Now, then this brings us to the last point. When we talk about democracy, it does not mean that we have never had democratic culture. In Indonesia, you have a long tradition and history of musyawarah and long deliberation, disagreement, discussion, which are historically being done respectfully. I think it is important that we have a different culture. In our culture, in our Asian culture, it is important to disagree, but there are methods, there are forms of disagreeing, still voicing the disagreements, but you can do it respectfully. Now, we don't have to be British, because we are not British. We will never be. We have a different way of deliberating or of disagreeing with our elders, but that does not mean that there is no space for disagreements and for democratic deliberation. I think there is, and it has been part of our culture and our tradition. Now, but why? Having said that, I think every democracy needs to continue to update itself. You need to continue to update yourself, because what we understand to be truly representative now is different from what it used to be understood 20 years ago, and how it used to be understood 50 years ago. In the past, we can have a conversation and talking about everything about women's rights without having any woman involved. That's fine. And it used to be called a democratic process, deliberation, because people, apparently men, decided. But to just see from the deliberative point of view that a group of people decided on a subject, it probably appeared to be democratic, but it missed out a very important component, the women. Now, the same with the Greek democracy. It was hailed, praised as the pioneer, as the first example recorded of democratic society. But it is often forgotten that there were slaves in Greece whose voices were not accounted. And budak, banyak budak di Yunani saat itu. Ada mereka banyak di sana dan suara mereka tidak dihargai dan tidak begitu inklusif. Ada juga yang grup-grup yang kalah perang, yang mana dibawa ke Yunani dan dipekerjakan di sana menjadi budak, tapi karena kalah perang, bukan kulit, tapi kalah di kelas itu, dihargai, bukan dihargai, tapi dianggap sebagai kelas budak. Dan juga harus diingat bahwa Yunani waktu itu, Athena saja itu sebuah kota kecil. Jadi eksperimen di sana itu tidak sebanding eksperimen demokrasi Indonesia. Indonesia punya 18, berapa puluh ribu pulau, 18.000 mungkin ya?
12.000 pulau.
Ya, itu suatu ukuran yang tidak bisa dibayangkan, tidak bisa disamakan ya. Dan juga di Yunani, walaupun punya keragaman adat, atau tradisi antara beberapa suku di sana, tapi tidak sama dengan yang kita punya di sini, yang mana punya puluhan ribu suku bangsa. Dan terutama di Indonesia banyak sekali suku bangsa yang bergabung menjadi bangsa Indonesia. Jadi itu memang Bhinneka Tunggal Ika itu sangat representatif untuk masyarakat Indonesia. Jadi begini, karena itu, karena punya banyak sekali perbedaan, maka demokrasi membantu untuk memperkuat, bukan untuk melemahkan. Kita punya dua opsi. Yang opsi satu itu memaksa persatuan. Pemaksaan dengan persatuan ada masalah sedikit, karena masalahnya itu dari pemersatu itu sendiri. Bahan apa yang akan dipakai untuk jadi pemersatu? Kebanyakan bahan pemersatu itu berdasarkan suatu naratif tunggal atau dominan. Jadi kalau hanya berdasarkan suatu naratif dominan, maka pada saat yang sama kita berusaha memersatukan, akan pecahan. Karena naratif nasionalis sebaik manapun tidak akan mampu untuk menyamakan orang yang pada dasarnya berbeda-beda. Tapi dengan demokrasi, kita mempunyai ukuran atau pembatas perbedaan, tapi kita bisa berbeda di dalam persamaan itu. Jadi berbeda-beda tetapi tetap satu. Itulah saya kira yang paling demokratis, unsur yang paling demokratis, yang menunjukkan bahwa dalam menghadapi sebuah perbedaan seperti Indonesia, memang Bhinneka Tunggal Ika berbeda tapi satu, itu suatu paham yang sangat demokratis dari konsepsinya. Kalau seandainya pahamnya semuanya harus satu tanpa ada perbedaan, counter persepsinya, apa yang akan terjadi? Akan terjadi kehancuran, bukan persatuan. Jadi ibaratnya seperti apa? Ibaratnya seperti gado-gado, atau mungkin salad. Ada bahan yang berbeda-beda di dalam, tapi pada akhirnya masih tetap gado-gado.
Gado-gado dan lote ya.
Ya. Salad juga. Ada di sana ada tomatnya, di sini ada bahan yang berbeda-beda tetapi tetap satu. Jadi itulah menurut saya memang tantangan. Jadi memang tidak ada demokrasi yang perfect, tidak ada gado-gado yang perfect, sempurna. Tapi ini sebuah proses yang berkelanjutan, yang sangat penting punya asas-asas, prinsip-prinsip pemersatu yang dasar, yang fundamental. Lalu dari situ sebuah generasi ke generasi yang lain akan terus bekerja supaya mencapai tujuan itu. Tapi tujuan itu sangat pengkhianat. Di saat kita kira kita akan menggapai itu, dia akan lari. Jadi prosesnya itu sangat permanen, elusif. Tapi itulah memang tantangan kehidupan bagi setiap bangsa dan setiap masyarakat. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much for your answer. It's very mencerahkan ya, but enlightening. So if there's any question from the audience, we would like to invite all of the audience to open cam and open the voice if there is a question from Zoom meeting or offline. This is a very good chance to communicate with the very great speaker, especially we can berkumpul ya di Zoom meeting ini untuk bisa berdiskusi lebih lanjut tentang perspektif demokrasi di Timor Leste. Oh ya, itu ada Ibu Pratiwi yang mau bertanya. Silakan, dipersilakan untuk open cam dan audionya.
Good morning, Mr. Fidelis.
Hello, good morning.
Okay, greetings from Yogyakarta, Mr. Fidelis. Yes, I want to know about your government, Timor-Leste. How your government conduct a process of democratic education and multicultural communication for youth or for younger generation, because we know that there are many migrants from different countries in Timor-Leste. Thanks for your explanation, Mr. Fidelis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very good question. Maybe we could directly go to Mr. Fidelis to answer the question.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is not that complicated. First, you have to, so the government has to take leadership, the state. So in Timor-Leste, we have a national electoral commission. We set up different civic education bodies, institutions. Their job was to promote that. And second, I think what we did was to involve civil society organizations. It is impossible for the government to be the one who's talking about civic education, inclusion, acceptance, when the civil society is not involved. So I think it was very important. It is very important in our case to involve civil society organizations in the promotion of tolerance, civic rights, etc. And then I think third, what is also very important is to involve religious organizations. Because in Timor-Leste, if you count, about perhaps 99% of people in Timor-Leste believe in God. 99.9999. So every person is a member of a religious group. So it is therefore not smart not to involve religious organizations. So you have to involve every religious organization to promote tolerance and acceptance. And Timor-Leste, our president recently just signed the document for human fraternity, signed by the Pope and Sheikh of Egypt. And human fraternity document was adopted by our parliament, and the substance is that Timorese state has to make sure that we respect all religious groups in Timor-Leste, and there has to be religious harmony. And fourth, the government has to work with all religious groups. We work with the Catholic Church, the majority, the religious group, but we also work with the other religious organizations like the Muslims, with at the Masjid An-Nur, with the head of the Timorese Muslim community, and with the Buddhists, with the Hindus. So their voices are heard. And in every opportunity we have in state framework where we have religious representatives, we also make sure that they are also represented. So I think this is very important. And so far, I think we can say safely that there is peace, there is a religious tolerance, and I think we're very proud of it. And so that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Mr. Fidelis. Maybe Mr. Danur want to add some more explanation about that? No. Okay. Is there any question from the student or audience? Dalam bahasa Indonesia juga diperbolehkan ya.
Bisa.
Yeah. Itu ada yang raise hand. Ya, Fatia Jannah, dipersilakan untuk open cam dan open audio.
Okay, before that, thank you for the chance. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Fatia Jannah, and I'm from a communication student in Bengkulu City. That my question for Mr. Fidelis is, in digital era, as we know, everyone can be a journalist and can share everything he wants. But in Timor-Leste, how many big media that Timor-Leste have, and how much that people trust that media, and how much the power of media to lead the people in Timor-Leste? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, maybe you can answer the question directly, sir.
Yeah, well, in Timor-Leste, we have public media, public television, that's RTTL, public television, public radio. We also have private televisions, GMN, Guadramor TV, TV Education, and all these things are they're quite active. But according to a recent survey, radio and television are still the most important sources of information. Though the number of people people who access information through the internet is also increasing. The use of telephones and internet connectivity has also improved. So more and more people are getting information through their telephones. So we are quite slow with regards to our telecommunication infrastructure. Only next year that we expect to have a fiber optic high-speed connectivity. So far, we're still using 3, 4G, so that's a bit slow. That makes internet still quite expensive. But when we have next year, when we have the fiber optic connection, we hope, we think that it will be game-changing technology, that now information will be freely available. But in all, I think news outlets are very important. News journalists are very important. Even those in government, people like myself, we pay attention to the things that the media says. I think that's very important. So whenever we pay attention to what the media says. And so I think there is also a sense of internal self-censorship, in a sense that we self-control, not censorship, self-control. That whatever we do, we know that the public is watching. So that's I think, a very good sign. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, it is regarding to the technology, sir. How is the media now? We know that there is a freedom of speech for everyone in Timor-Leste, and then everyone can post anything. How the government in Timor-Leste limited the privacy and then confidential data? How to protect that from the perspective of technology and the policy in Timor-Leste?
We are in the process of producing laws, the privacy laws, access to information laws. So these things are being finalized. And again, whenever you have this competition between laws and regulations and technology always wins. Normally technology comes first, then you have regulations to anticipate it. Because otherwise, you may have a law.
Maybe it's a bit interrupted by the
punishment is hard. OG content laws are following suit. So in general, I think, but in any way, the main concern is to make sure that laws will not inhibit or prohibit freedom of expression and people's liberty. So whatever, and also in our lawmaking process, whenever we make new laws, we make sure that we consult widely. And we will always have opportunity to debate wherever we can with the civil society organizations. Thank you.
Okay, very great. We still have lots of questions, but there is a message that you have to go immediately because of the director. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Fidelis, to join us in this great discussion. Maybe you can have a closing statement about that. It's very pleasure to have you in this discussion.
Very much, Dr. Danurseto. To be visiting Bengkulu. So, and I really am a firm believer of the importance of communication, of people getting to know each other, especially people of younger generation, because I think it is our responsibility to make sure that the world of tomorrow is much better than what we had before and what we are having at presently. So it is really an honor. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And whenever you have the opportunity, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. And I hope to see a much better and much improved relationship between Timor-Leste in Indonesia and Dili and Bengkulu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you in the future.
Hey, see you. See you.
In Bengkulu especially.
And in Bengkulu and in Timor-Leste.
Look forward to. Let us know when you intend to come.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah. Maybe Mr. Danurseto could give the closing statement so we can close this discussion after the closing statement from Mr. Danurseto.
Oke, terima kasih Mrs. Arifat Resia. Oke, saya berharap juga kami bisa bermain ke Timor-Leste.
Kami tunggu.
Oke. Terima kasih juga Mr. Fidelis ya. Semoga hubungan nanti di 2023 bisa masuk ke anggota ASEAN. Amin.
Amin.
Sehingga bisa meningkatkan perekonomian dan kerjasama Indonesia dan Timor-Leste. Saya pikir itu. Terima kasih. Saya kembalikan ke moderator.
Thank you so much for our speaker, His Excellence Fidelis Leite Magalhaes and Mr. Dr. Danurseto Hadiprasada, and all of the audience that already in the Zoom meeting and offline meeting. I would like to thank you for all of you to listen for this international discussion. Finally, hopefully, we can get a lots of discussion in the future. Thank you very much, and we close this discussion with Hamdalah, Alhamdulillah, and applause to all of us.
Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim.
Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu. Didirikan pada tahun 1982 hingga sekarang, sudah mencetak lebih dari ribuan mahasiswa yang sudah bekerja di bidang sosial dan politik. Sampai saat ini, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik berkomitmen untuk menumbuh kembangkan setiap mahasiswa untuk bisa berkompetisi di berbagai bidang keilmuan sosial dan politik. FISIP Unip memiliki visi yaitu menjadi fakultas yang mengembangkan kajian ilmu-ilmu sosial dan politik pada masyarakat pesisir berkelas regional ASEAN pada tahun 2025. 1. Mengembangkan pendidikan dan penelitian dalam bidang ilmu sosial dan ilmu politik lokal, nasional, dan region ASEAN. 2. Menghasilkan karya berstatus hak atas kekayaan intelektual atau HKI. 3. melaksanakan pengabdian sesuai dengan kebutuhan masyarakat pesisir di tingkat lokal, nasional, dan regional. 4. Memperluas jaringan kerja atau networking ke region ASEAN dalam pendidikan, penelitian, dan pengabdian di bidang ilmu sosial dan ilmu politik. 5. Mengembangkan sistem tata kelola universitas yang baik dan bersih. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik memiliki 12 program studi yang terdiri dari 1. Program studi vokasi administrasi perkantoran yang merupakan sebuah program studi dengan lulusan vokasi serta akan berfokus kepada administrasi perkantoran. 2. Program studi vokasi jurnalistik. Program studi vokasi jurnalistik merupakan sebuah program studi yang mempelajari tentang jurnalistik. Lulusan program ini akan berfokus kepada penerapan jurnalistik di lingkup-lingkup pekerjaan seperti wartawan profesional dan lain sebagainya. 3. Program studi vokasi perpustakaan dan sains informasi yang merupakan program vokasi yang mempelajari tentang teknisi perpustakaan dan manajemen perpustakaan. Yang keempat, program studi sarjana kesejahteraan sosial. Di dalam berkehidupan di masyarakat, tentunya sebuah kesejahteraan masyarakat sangat penting dilakukan demi menunjang kehidupan bermasyarakat yang baik. Maka dari itu, program studi kesejahteraan sosial hadir sebagai solusi. Yang kelima, program studi sarjana sosiologi. Secara garis besar, ilmu sosiologi dapat dirangkum sebagai bidang keilmuan tentang masyarakat. Sebagai cabang dari ilmu sosial, jurusan sosiologi secara spesifik akan mendalami berbagai bidang yang terkait dengan hubungan antar manusia dan pengaruh dari terbentuknya hubungan tersebut. 6. Program studi sarjana administrasi publik. Administrasi publik adalah hal terpenting dari bidang layanan publik. Profesional administrator publik menghabiskan hari-hari mereka bekerja untuk memastikan bahwa organisasi mereka berjalan semulus dan seefisien mungkin.
7. Program studi sarjana ilmu komunikasi. Program studi ilmu komunikasi adalah sebuah program yang berupaya menghasilkan lulusan terbaik sebagai pelaku profesional pada bidang komunikasi dengan spesialisasi di bidang komunikasi strategis serta komunikasi massa dan digital. 8. Program studi sarjana jurnalistik. Jurusan jurnalistik mengajak mahasiswa mendalami dunia jurnalistik beserta karakter dan dinamika yang terjadi di berbagai media massa seperti televisi, radio, cetak, dan online. Mahasiswa akan mempelajari bagaimana suatu informasi didistribusikan melalui media massa dengan mengetahui karakter masing-masing media beserta perubahannya. 9. Program studi sarjana perpustakaan dan sains informasi. Program studi perpustakaan dan sains informasi menghasilkan lulusan yang dapat mengelola pengetahuan dan informasi menjadi produk berdaya guna, menerbitkan kumpulan informasi sesuai dengan kebutuhan pengguna, membangun konten dengan menjadi konten creator yang menyajikan informasi yang berkualitas, dan dapat berwirausaha di bidang digitalisasi dokumen serta pembuatan software perpustakaan. 10. Program studi Magister Administrasi Publik, 11 program studi Magister Ilmu Komunikasi, dan 12 program studi Magister Kesejahteraan Sosial.
Kami memberikan pelayanan terbaik didukung oleh sarana dan prasarana perkuliahan seperti laboratorium, perpustakaan, ruang perkuliahan yang nyaman, fasilitas olahraga, gazebo mahasiswa, juga sarana dan prasarana lainnya. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu memiliki dosen yang berpengalaman baik dalam negeri maupun luar negeri, serta telah banyak membangun kerjasama di universitas ternama di Indonesia dan di Asia.
Pelayanan merupakan yang utama bagi kami. Dalam melayani mahasiswa, kami sangat mengedepankan ketersediaan layanan, sehingga mahasiswa Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik menjadi terbantu. Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Universitas Bengkulu berkomitmen untuk menumbuh kembangkan sivitas akademika yang berkompeten di bidangnya. Maka dari itu, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik memiliki banyak dosen yang sudah mencapai gelar doktor dari berbagai belahan dunia. Mengikuti perkembangan zaman, Visip Unip telah melakukan berbagai inovasi dalam pembelajarannya. Salah satunya melalui media daring guna meningkatkan mutu pembelajaran. Kegiatan kemahasiswaan, hingga hari ini, Visip telah menciptakan banyak kegiatan mahasiswa yang diantaranya Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik Expo, Dekan Cup, serta program-program di tingkat jurusan, fakultas maupun di tingkat nasional.
Recording stopped.